Hey, I've been thinking about improving my English, but I'm not sure whether to focus on American or British English. Any thoughts?
Well, it depends on your goals. American English tends to dominate global media. So if you're into movies, music, or business communication, it might be more practical.
That makes sense. But I've heard British English is considered more formal and traditional. Wouldn't that be an advantage in certain situations?
Absolutely. If you're aiming for academic or formal writing, British English might be preferred. It can convey a certain level of sophistication and is often favored in international organizations.
True, but I've also read that American English has a simplicity and straightforwardness that can be an advantage in casual conversations and everyday life.
You're right. American English tends to be more straightforward, and the pronunciation can be easier for non-native speakers to grasp. It might be a good choice if you're planning to travel or work in diverse environments.
I've noticed some spelling differences too, like color versus color or realize versus realize. Does that matter?
It can. While both are correct in their respective contexts, being consistent in your choice is important. If you're writing for a specific audience, it's best to align with their preferred spelling to avoid confusion.
What about slang and expressions? Are there significant differences there?
Both American and British English have unique slang and expressions. If you have a specific interest or connection to a particular region, learning the corresponding slang could help you feel more integrated.
I see. I guess it boils down to personal preference and my specific needs. Maybe a mix of both would be the most versatile approach?
That's a great idea. Being bilingual in American and British English can make you adaptable in various situations. You'll be able to understand and communicate effectively, regardless of the English variety being used.
I'll consider a balanced approach then, incorporating aspects of both American and British English into my learning. By the way, do you think regional accents play a significant role in choosing between American and British English?
That's an interesting point. Both varieties have diverse accents within them. American English has accents like Southern, New York, or Californian, while British English includes accents like received pronunciation, Cockney, or Scottish. It could depend on which accent you find more appealing or useful.
Good point. I guess exposure to various accents can enhance my overall language proficiency. But what about grammar differences? Are they substantial enough to influence the decision?
Grammar differences are there, but they are generally minor. The verb tense, prepositions, and sentence structure can vary slightly, but it's not a drastic distinction. Choosing either variety won't significantly impact your ability to understand or be understood.
I've heard about the cultural nuances associated with each version of English. Does that matter when learning the language?
Language is deeply connected to culture, and understanding cultural nuances can make your communication more effective. For example, British English might include more formal expressions tied to etiquette, while American English might have its own cultural references and idioms.
Interesting. So, it's not just about the words, but also about understanding the cultural context. How can I immerse myself in the culture associated with each version?
Well, consuming media from both regions is a good start. Watch movies, TV shows, and read books or articles from both American and British sources. Engaging with native speakers, whether online or in person, can also provide valuable cultural insights.
Great. I'm leaning towards a balanced approach now. Do you think there are specific industries or professions where one version of English is more advantageous?
It depends on the industry, but generally, American English is more prevalent in business, technology, and entertainment, while British English might be preferred in fields like academia, publishing, or diplomacy. Researching the language preferences in your specific field can guide your decision.
I'll look into that. By the way, do you have any recommendations for language learning resources tailored to each version?
There are plenty of resources available. For American English, you can explore platforms like Duolingo, FluentU, or even language exchange apps. For British English, BBC Learning English and Cambridge English Online are excellent choices. It might also be beneficial to invest in a good dictionary or language guide for each version.
I appreciate that. Speaking of practice, do you think it's important to visit the respective countries to enhance language skills?
Visiting the countries can be a fantastic way to immerse yourself in the language and culture. You'll have the opportunity to interact with native speakers, experience daily life, and pick up on the nuances that might be challenging to grasp from a distance.
That makes sense. It sounds like a great adventure too. But what if I can't travel right away? Are there other ways to simulate that immersive experience?
You can create a language-rich environment at home. Surround yourself with English by watching movies, listening to music, and reading books in both American and British English. Engage in language exchange programs or find language partners online to practice speaking regularly.
Good advice. Now, when it comes to exams and certifications, are there any differences between American and British English exams?
Yes, there are some differences in the standardized tests. For example, the TEFL, Test of English as a Foreign Language, is often associated with American English, while IELTS, International English Language Testing System, is more widely used for British English. However, both are widely accepted globally, so it ultimately depends on your goals and the requirements of the institution or employer.
Got it. I'll keep that in mind. Moving on, what about the influence of technology? Are there any specific digital tools or apps that cater to one version of English more than the other?
Technology has made language learning more accessible. Apps like Babel, Memrise, and Rosetta Stone are quite versatile and don't necessarily lean towards one version of English. However, you might find content on platforms like YouTube or podcasts that are more region-specific, allowing you to choose content based on your preference.
That's good to know. I suppose the key is to stay flexible and adapt my learning approach based on what works best for me.
Learning a language is a personal journey, and what works for one person may not work for another. Try different methods, stay open-minded, and don't be afraid to tailor your approach to suit your learning style and goals.
Wise words. Now, thinking about employment opportunities, Do employers typically have a preference for one version of English over the other?
It can vary depending on the employer and industry. As mentioned earlier, certain industries may prefer one version over the other. However, in many cases, employers are more concerned with effective communication skills rather than a specific English version. Having a good command of either American or British English or both can be an asset in the global job market.
Lastly, do you think slang and informal expressions are important to learn, or is it enough to focus on formal language?
Both have their place. While formal language is crucial for professional and academic settings, understanding slang and informal expressions can greatly enhance your ability to connect with people on a personal level. It adds a layer of authenticity to your language skills and helps you navigate everyday conversations more smoothly.
I appreciate your insights. This has been incredibly helpful in guiding my decision. Thanks for taking the time to discuss this in such detail.
You're very welcome. I'm glad I could assist you. Remember, language learning is a rewarding journey, so enjoy every step of it. If you ever have more questions or need further guidance, feel free to reach out. Happy learning!